I wired $42,000 every month into what my children called the treatment fund. I sold stock at a loss. I canceled a long-planned trip to the coast. I even pawned my watch, a gift from my late wife, to top off one brutal invoice. Then my 8-year-old granddaughter whispered where the treatments really were happening, and the next morning I saw the video from Cabo. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Martin Hale. I am 74 years old, a grandfather of 5, and for the last 3 years I have been the willing, terrified financier of a sickness that never existed. I did not see it coming. That is what still keeps me up at night. For half a century I was the man who spotted rotten beams at a glance, the man who could walk a job site and tell if a subcontractor was padding an estimate just by the way he folded the paper. I built an HVAC company from one used van and a bucket of tools into a multi-state operation with union crews, government contracts, and the kind of compliance audits that make most men sweat through their collars. I sold it at 65, buried my wife Lynn at 68, and told myself that the money I had earned should do what we always said it would do, take care of family. I thought I was doing exactly that when my daughter called me through tears. "Dad, please do not panic," Lila said that afternoon, her voice raw. "We just got the call. It is rare. They do not even know how to classify it. They said we have to move fast." I remember standing in my kitchen, the light slanting across Lynn's old recipe index on the counter, the one with the card for chicken and dumpling stained by years of fingers. I turned the faucet off without realizing I had left it running. "Who is we?" I asked. "Me and Tom," she said. "But it is not about us. It is about Noah." The world narrowed to a tunnel. Noah was 6 then. He had my eyes and Lynn's calm. He liked to sit on the floor and line up his toy trucks by axle count, dead serious. "Tell me what to do," I said. The next hours were all urgency and numbers. Experimental panel. Insurance denial. Out-of-network specialist. Travel protocols. Tom took the phone and sounded like a man reading from a manual, except when his voice broke over the phrase, organ involvement. By evening I had wired $15,000. It was not enough. "The medication alone is 11, Tom said. Travel and lodging near the clinic for 4 weeks is another 12. I told my bank to lift all transfer limits. I canceled my own medical procedure because I did not want to miss a call. When I hung up each night, I would stand in the doorway of the room Lynn used to call her library and say out loud to her photograph, "We are doing it, Lynn. We are keeping our promise." My son, David, called 2 days later. At first I thought he was calling to check on his nephew. He was not. "Dad," he said, "I was not going to tell you, but the timing is. I cannot hide this. The doctors say the issue may be genetic. They want to screen our kids, too. They found markers in Ava. She needs the same specialist for evaluation." My oldest granddaughter. 19 then, smart as a whip and stubborn in a way that had always warmed me because it reminded me of her grandmother. My throat closed. I heard myself say the same terrible sentence twice in 1 week. "Tell me what to do." That is how $42,000 a month began to leave my accounts like clockwork. $22,000 toward Lila and Tom's treatment fund, $20,000 toward David and Erica's evaluation and prophylaxis plan. They sent me PDFs full of billing codes, couriered lab kits with barcodes and return envelopes, appointment reminders with the names of clinics that sounded legitimate and frightening in equal measure. Mitochondrial. Cytokine panels. Compassionate use protocol. When I offered to drive them, they told me visits were restricted because of immune suppression guidelines. When I asked to Zoom with a doctor, they warned me that some of the specialists refused external communications to avoid litigation risk. When I asked for an address so that I could send flowers to the nurse they kept praising, they told me the clinic policy banned deliveries. I did not argue. I did not want to be the man who made an already unbearable situation harder with demands for proof. I cooked and left food on Lila's porch. I sent audio messages to the grandchildren telling them stories about their grandmother's childhood. I sat with my phone on my lap and jumped every time it buzzed, hungry for any scrap of news. Each text that said, "no change," felt like both a reprieve and a cut. The first time doubt tried to form a sentence in my mind, I chased it away. It was a Saturday in May. I was in my garage looking for a socket wrench when I kicked a box and a slip of paper faltered to the floor. It was a deposit slip. I had kept every deposit and transfer in paper form for 40 years. The habit had survived the sale of the business, and there are some rituals that still make a man feel like a man. The slip glowed under the fluorescent light. $22,000 wired. Memo, Noah month 3. I held the paper and thought of Noah choosing a red truck instead of a blue one and the way his lip trembled when he was about to be brave. I made more transfers. I spoke in practical details and silent prayers. It is easy to describe how a thing feels when you know where it ends. It is harder to be honest about what it felt like when I did not. Those months were a blur of purposeful motion and sudden grief. I kept the lawn cut because Lynn hated dandelions in June. I went to the barber's shop every second Thursday because she liked the way I looked when my ears were not hidden by hair. I kept those small promises fiercely because the big promise was so enormous that it blotted out the sun. When Lila texted at midnight, complication. We need to increase the dose immediately, I sat up in bed and sent another 19,000 without making her wait until morning. When Tom called at 6 a.m. and shouted into the phone that the pharmacy could not fill the order without a second copay, I reminded him there was only one copay per fill and then sent the money anyway because he said that in a rush they had to go to a different location. I heard the way he said the word rush. I heard the way my daughter's breath caught when Noah coughed in the background. I sent the money. There is a place between love and fear where a person becomes simple. I lived there for 3 years. The first crack came from a direction I did not expect. It was not a bank error or a misrouted email. It was not even a careless phrase from one of the adults. It was my 8-year-old granddaughter, Emily. The birthday party was at my house because the clinic is too far and the kids need normalcy, Lila had said. I cleaned the grill and set out the paper napkins that Lynn used to fold into silly shapes for the children. I learned how to frost a cake from a video at 6 in the morning because Lynn always did it and I wanted Emily to know some things still happened the way they used to, even if different hands were doing them. The party was a whirl of squeals and tissue paper. It felt almost honest. When the cake was cut and the sugar high began to ebb, Emily drifted into my study where I was stacking plates and humming that off-key tune I used to sing to her when she was a baby. She shut the door behind her and looked at me with a seriousness I had seen only once, when she watched me fold a flag at Lynn's funeral and asked whether every good thing had to end. Her voice came out very small. "Grandpa, please do not tell Mommy I told you," she said, and then she climbed onto my lap and pressed her cheek to my chest like she used to before her legs became too long. "I will not," I said automatically. "What is it?" "Mommy says not to cry unless you are here," Emily whispered. "She says it makes your heart open. She says to remember the right words." I did not understand. The right words? Emily nodded, very serious. The ones that sound like hospitals. I did not move. I did not breathe. I felt the old house tilt. What else did Mommy say? My voice came out steady by some mercy I do not deserve. She says that when we hold our tummy and talk about the medicine, you look at your phone and then give Daddy a hug and then money comes soon. Mommy says sometimes you need the pictures to believe. But I do not like the pictures. I do not like holding the tubes. They smell like plastic and they make Noah itchy. I put my palm on the back of her head because it seemed like a thing a grandfather should do when a child's truths threatened to tear the world open. She kept talking, as if she had been waiting for a lap and a promise to let the words out. Do I have the sickness? She asked. I opened my mouth and nothing came. Ava says there is no sickness. Ava says I should not tell you that she said that. I found my voice again in pieces. Emily, I said carefully, who told you to say there is a sickness? She looked confused, like the question had a trick inside. Everybody, she said. Because that is how we pay for the trips. What trips? To the ocean, she said. Mommy says the salt air is good for our lungs. It is called a therapeutic environment. That is a right word. But I think it is just a beach. She smiled like children smile when they have discovered something important by themselves. It broke me in a way that I will not repair. After the party, after the dishes, after I waved them down the driveway and stood alone beside the flower bed that Lynn planted the spring before she died, I went inside and opened my computer. The screen glowed on my old desk, the wood worn smooth where Lynn's elbows rested when she read. I typed 2 names into a search bar, the clinic that had been on half a dozen invoices and the specialist I had been told was the only one in the region qualified to interpret the children's lab results. The clinic's address was a co-working space. The phone number rang to a voicemail that recited office hours but never offered a way to reach a human being. The specialist's website was clean and modern and entirely real, and he appeared to be what Lila had described, specialized in rare inflammatory conditions, lectures at conferences, publishes papers with titles that would give a layman a headache. My heart eased for 1 second, until I clicked Appointments and read the notice right at the top of the page. The practice did not accept patients under 18. Pediatric cases were referred to a hospital 3 counties away. I stared at that line until the words loosened from their meanings. Under the notice was an email address reserved for physicians. I sat up straighter. Some habits and privileges survive retirement, especially if you have spent years donating to hospital foundations and scholarship funds. I wrote a message that was truthful and formal. I wrote like a donor and a grandfather and a man who believed in procedures. I did not tell him any names. I did not accuse. I simply asked whether his practice had any consultative relationship with a pediatric clinic at the co-working space address. I pressed send and felt the floor of my office tilt again. The reply arrived in the morning. It was short. It was polite. It used phrases like, no affiliation, and, do not recognize, and, wish you and your family well. I did not call Lila. I did not call David. I did not drive to anyone's house and make a scene. I did what I have always done when faced with a problem that requires a certain kind of care. I opened the drawer where I keep the business cards that matter, and I called my lawyer. Do not sugarcoat this for me, I said to Ben when he arrived 2 hours later and sat on the same chair where Lynn used to sew buttons back onto my shirts. If I gave gifts, then the gifts are gone. If I made loans, then the loans can be collected. That is the line, yes. Yes, he said. Ben is 62 and has been giving me the truth for 3 decades. But there are paths that do not rely on that dichotomy. It depends on documentation, on inducements, on representations made. Fraud, I said flatly. He did not flinch. Perhaps. Or perhaps coercion. Or undue influence. Or elder exploitation. You tell me what you have. I told him how it began. I told him about the photos of small arms with tourniquet bands and adhesive squares that looked like they had been placed and removed and placed again for effect. I told him about the invoices and the billing codes and the smell of plastic tubes that made Noah itchy. I told him about Emily's whisper and the specialist's email and the clinic address that led to no clinic at all. I told him about my pride and my promises and my fear that all of this was my fault because grief has a way of making a man blind. Ben did not pity me. He started a list. He said phrases like, chain of custody, and, preservation letter, and, ex parte relief. He told me to stop transferring money immediately, and he put that instruction in writing. He told me which bank officer to call and what to say. He told me to sit very still while his paralegal drove across town to the co-working space and took photographs and asked a receptionist questions that she did not know she was answering. Then Ben did what good lawyers do when a client's heart is breaking. He made me a plan. First, he said, we secure your present. We freeze discretionary transfers. We change passwords. We place a fraud alert on your credit in case anyone decides that your wallet is an ATM with a pin that looks like love. Second, we collect proof. Not to argue in a living room. To argue in a courtroom if needed. Third, we restructure your future. You told me you wanted to take care of the grandchildren regardless of what happens with their parents. There are ways to do that that do not involve funding lies. He set a folder between us. Inside were drafts for a new trust. I had never made a trust for the grandchildren directly. I had believed that the parents knew best, and, this is the shameful part, believed that my oversight would always be present to fix things if they went wrong. But oversight is not immortality, and Ben had been telling me for years that structure is nothing without guts. The new trust named each grandchild as a beneficiary. The trustees were not their parents. They were professionals who owed me legal duties and owed the children a fiduciary duty written in ink, not in the soft language of family. Ben paused when I reached for a pen sooner than he expected. There is one more thing, he said, tapping the folder. You asked whether a gift is gone. A gift is gone, generally. But inducements matter. If they represented medical necessity to secure your transfers, and if medical necessity was false, then we have leverage. We can negotiate return. We can attach liens. We can assign their own creditors a new lender, you. I felt something old and hard in my chest loosen when he said that last part. Attach liens, I repeated, the way I might repeat a well-known measurement. How? We draft loan agreements, he said. We memorialize what should always have been loans. We anchor them in the representations they made. We make it very clear that you will treat any refusal to sign as an admission of misrepresentation. Then we file UCC financing statements to put the world on notice that you have a secured interest in any property purchased with the funds. If they sign, we have an admission and security. If they refuse, we have a case. You think they will sign? I think greed makes people sloppy, Ben said. And fear makes them fast. If we present the papers with the right bait, they will sign so quickly that the pen will squeak. The bait was simple. I called my children, sounding tired and contrite. I said I had spoken to the bank and my accountant. I said the monthly wires would have to go through a family health fund, so that I could continue without running afoul of tax issues. I sent a message to the family group chat that said, "Please pick up a packet from Ben's office. Just signatures. So I can keep the money moving." Within 24 hours, both families had picked up their packets. Within 36, the papers were back on Ben's desk, signed. I will never forget the way his eyebrows rose when he placed them in front of me. "They did not read," he said. The documents were long, which is a kindness, because a long document makes a liar feel like he is in familiar terrain. It also makes a judge less likely to believe the signer did not know what he was doing. The main provisions were simple beneath the legal language. Every dollar I had transferred in the last 36 months had been advanced in reliance on representations of urgent medical necessity, and those representations were attached as exhibits, texts, voicemails, invoices. If any representation was false, the advances converted to loans retroactive to the date of each transfer, at a modest interest rate that would not read like revenge to a judge. The loans were secured by personal property and equity in the homes I had helped to purchase. The parents agreed to periodic audits of medical expenses by an independent trustee. The fund could pay only vendors directly. Personal reimbursements required a higher level of documentation. Non-compliance triggered acceleration, an entire balance due at once. I had worried that I was becoming a different kind of man by taking this path. But when I saw those signatures, I recognized the man who could tell whether a beam would carry a load by the way it sounded when he knocked. I felt like myself for the first time in months. Then the phone in my pocket buzzed. It was a number I did not recognize from an area code I knew well. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later a text appeared, "Mr. Hale, this is Dr. Mayfield from the Children's Inflammatory Disease Center. I received an inquiry forwarded to me. May I speak with you?" I called immediately. The doctor was younger than I expected and older than the photo on the website. He was direct. I matched that. I told him my grandchildren's first names and the clinics I had been told they visited. He told me there was no record of any of those names. He told me that if a child had been in his orbit for even a peripheral consult, he would know. He told me the only pediatric clinic at the co-working address was a wellness service that did vitamin infusions and called everything a detox. Then he said something that I will hear in the quiet of my house for the rest of my life. "Mr. Hale," he said gently, "it is very hard to be a grandparent in a crisis. People underestimate how much love and fear lead good people into bad situations." I thanked him. I sat in the chair where Lynn used to sew and tried to imagine her face if she had been here to hear that sentence. I think she would have put her hand on my cheek and told me to keep going. That is what I did. Ben's paralegal had been busy. She had photographs of the co-working floor, a business directory with no listing for a clinic, and a flyer for a business called Cellular Wellness Suites, printed on card stock that made my teeth itch. She had also printed something else. "Instagram," she said, sliding a glossy sheet across my desk. "Public accounts. Lila's friend, David's wife's sister. People who like to post. I think you should see this. It is one thing to suspect. It is another to experience your own money in photographs." There was Tom on a deck with a drink that cost more than I used to charge for a call-out on a holiday. There was Erica in a dress that looked like the inside of a seashell, holding a flute of champagne at a bar with a chandelier that meant business. There were the children building a sand castle on a beach that Emily had told me about. "Therapeutic environment," the caption said, followed by a string of hearts and a medical tag emoji. Then there was the video from Cabo. The one where a person swung a bottle of tequila by the neck and shouted, "To the treatment fund." While my daughter laughed and someone panned the camera to show a boat that made even my old contractor's eyes widen at the idea of a materials cost. I watched that video until it looped, then I closed my eyes and saw Lynn's face, not angry, not shocked, just tired in a way that comes from watching your life's work being spent on salt and light and noise. I did not text. I did not confront. I executed. Ben filed the UCC statements. He drafted letters to my children. They were not emotional. They were notices. They stated that an audit would occur in 7 days. They demanded records, invoices, physician notes, proof of appointments, receipts for medications, travel records that matched medical appointments. They offered a private process with the trustee and a path to continue funding directly to legitimate vendors. They made it clear that any non-medical expenses paid from my transfers would be deducted from future disbursements or added to the balance due under the promissory notes. They warned that refusal to comply would result in acceleration. Lila called first. Her voice was not a daughter's voice. It was the voice of a person used to controlling a narrative that had slipped. "Dad, what is this?" she said. "You cannot." "I can," I said. "And I will. Bring me Noah's records. Bring me appointment confirmations. Bring me receipts for medications." She made a sound like a laugh and a sob tried to share a throat. "You do not trust me," she said. "I trusted you so much that I did not ask a single question while I wired you more than $1 million, I said. I made my voice quiet so that she would have to lean into it with her mind. "This is how I am going to trust you now. With documentation." She hung up. David called 10 minutes later and tried a different door. "Dad, this is a misunderstanding," he said. "Erica did not know about the new fund. The paperwork is confusing. We can fix it." "We will fix it with receipts," I said. When they realized that begging and anger did not work, they tried something modern. The next morning a long post appeared on a social media platform I use only to see photographs of my grandchildren's first day of school. The post said that a beloved family member had become abusive and was using his wealth to control vulnerable people in the middle of a medical crisis. It said that he had hired a predatory lawyer. It said that anyone who wanted to help should contact Lila for the name of the real clinic. I did not reply. Ben did not reply. The trustee sent one email. It said, "Please bring your records to our office on Friday at 10 a.m. On Thursday night my doorbell rang. It was Ava. She stood on my porch with a backpack and eyes that had seen too much too young. "I am sorry," she said, stepping inside when I held the door open. She did not hug me. She set the backpack on the floor. "They told us to lie. They told us that if we told the truth, you would stop loving us." I did not believe them. I believed you would find out and you would do something like this. I wanted you to. I made her tea because Lynn would have made tea. I sat with a girl and listened to a young woman. Ava told me things I needed and did not want to know. She told me about staged photographs and borrowed clinic gowns and rented infusion pumps. She told me about group chats where phrases like, "remember the talking points," were used unironically. She told me about trips to therapeutic environments that looked a lot like resorts with better marketing. She told me about the time she had said no, and the way the adults in the room had made their faces blank, like she had ceased to be useful even if she remained loved. Then she told me the thing I needed most to hear to go to sleep and wake up and keep going. "Grandpa," she said, "I think they forgot that you used to build things." Builders do not fall for paint on rotten wood. On Friday morning, Ben and I sat at a long table while the trustee arranged stacks of paper. Lila arrived with Tom. They looked tired in the way people look when a hangover lasts longer than a headache. David and Erica arrived 5 minutes late with a folder so slim that the trustee's eyebrows rose and then smoothed again. The silence in that room was a different kind of silence than the one that had lived in my house since Lynn left. This was the silence before a hammer falls. The trustee began. "Good morning," she said. "I am here to conduct an audit of medical expenses paid with advances from Mr. Hale's accounts. Please place all records on the table." Tom set down a stack of invoices. They were crisp. They were numbered in a font that no clinic uses. They matched nothing and did not correspond to any known billing code. The trustee set them aside without comment and asked for appointment confirmations. Lila said the appointments were confidential. The trustee asked for pharmacy receipts. Lila said the medications were from a compounder who had a strict privacy policy. The trustee asked for travel records that matched appointment dates. Lila said they deleted travel confirmations because of cybersecurity. The trustee turned to David and Erica. Their folder contained 3 receipts for vitamin infusions at a wellness spa. The dates did not match any transfer dates. The amounts did not match any prophylaxis plan invoices. Erica said there had been a fire at the clinic that destroyed records. No local news outlet contained any mention of a fire at any clinic. Ben spoke only once. "The documents you signed," he said calmly, tapping the promissory notes with one finger, "require cooperation with an audit. Non-cooperation is a default. Default triggers acceleration." Erica laughed. It sounded like something brittle snapping in a room with high ceilings. "You would not do that to your grandchildren," she said. "I would not do it to my grandchildren," I said. "I would do it to you." Lila stood. She put her hands on the back of her chair like she wanted to flip it. I watched the motion the way I used to watch a crane's line in a high wind. "You cannot take our house," she said. "You cannot cut us off. We will tell everyone what you are." Something old and steady in me sighed. I thought of Lynn's hands on my cheeks after a fight with David when he was 16. I thought of the way she could look at a boy and a man at the same time and decide which one she was going to speak to. "You can tell the truth," I said. "Start with that." Ben laid a letter on the table. "This is notice of acceleration," he said. "Given the lack of documentation and the admissions made in this room, the balances are due in full. The trust is also now in effect. The trustee will be paying legitimate educational and medical expenses for the grandchildren directly. Until further notice, no funds will be distributed to their parents." It is remarkable how fast a room can empty of bravado when a person realizes that posturing will not move a single number in a single account. Tom asked for a bathroom and did not return for 15 minutes. Lila cried. David went quiet in a way that made me remember the boy who used to stand in the outfield in Little League and forget that the ball could come to him. Erica did math in her head so quickly that I could almost see the digits trying to rearrange themselves into something that would make this go away. They left with copies and a date for the next step. I went home and sat in my kitchen and made myself a sandwich because Lynn would have said that a man should eat after that kind of morning. The next 72 hours were the kind of domestic violence that money makes. Credit cards declined at boutiques where the clerks knew my daughter by name. An automatic payment for a lease bounced. A charity gala RSVP came back with a note that said, "Attendance rescinded." A banker called David to say his home equity line was now held by an entity called Hale Family Secured, LLC. He called me and shouted. I told him to speak to Ben. I did not enjoy any of that. I will not lie and say it made me sick with guilt either. It did not. It felt like setting a crooked picture frame straight after years of pretending it did not bother me. On Tuesday morning a man in a navy suit knocked on my door and served me with a copy of a petition. Lila and David were seeking a restraining order. The petition said that I was harassing them. It said that I was weaponizing my wealth. It said that I had cut off medical treatment to vulnerable family members. It asked the court to order me to continue funding their care. Ben smiled when he read it, which is not a thing most people would understand unless they have spent a lifetime in rooms where truth eventually matters. We will respond, he said. And we will do it with evidence. The hearing was 2 weeks later. The courthouse smelled like old wood and patience. Lila looked pale in a way that was 2/3 calculation and 1/3 fear. David wore a suit that fit badly. Erica wore a dress that fit too well for a person who claimed ruin. Tom wore a tie that was a little too loud. Ava sat behind me with the trustee at her side. Emily and Noah were in school because they are children and they will not be tools any longer. The judge was a woman with a voice that could cut foam without making a mess. She listened. She asked for documents. She asked the clinic's name 3 times and then asked where it was. She looked at the address. She looked at Ben. She looked back at the address. Counsel, she said, this is a co-working space. Erica stood and made a speech about non-traditional medicine. The judge held up a hand, palm down, without looking at her, and Erica sat. Ben did not make a speech. He read excerpts aloud. He read from the promissory notes, including the clause that converted gifts to loans upon misrepresentation. He read the line where each signer acknowledged that they were making statements under penalty of perjury. He read text messages in which Lila told Erica to use the long word list with me and to say immunosuppression. He read the caption beneath the Cabo video, to the treatment fund. He played the video without music. The courtroom was very quiet except for the sound of ice in glasses and the small sound I made involuntarily when I saw my daughter toss her head back and laugh. Ben called the specialist from the children's hospital. He did not have patients by those names. He did not have any relationship with any clinic at the co-working space. He did not know why his practice had been invoked. He said the sentence that had soothed me like a hand on a shoulder. People underestimate how much love and fear lead good people into bad situations. Then he said another sentence. They also underestimate how much that love will do to protect children once a good person wakes up. When it was Lila's turn to speak, she cried. She said that I had always preferred David. David said that I had always preferred Lila. It might have been funny if it had not been a hearing where a judge held a pen that could draw lines on paper that would redraw our lives. The judge denied their petition. She did it without commentary that could be turned into a social media post later. She did it with the plain declarative sentences that make up the language of the law. She granted my motion to enforce the audit and to compel the production of records. She warned them that continuing to make misrepresentations in her courtroom would have consequences beyond paying their father back. We settled a month later. People who think settlement means no justice have never watched a person who lies sign a document they never wanted to see exist. The terms are not for social media. They are not for gossip. They are written in the quiet ink of the clerk's office and the recorded land records and a lien docket. I will tell you what matters. The balances were acknowledged. The houses I had helped my children buy secured those balances now in ways that would outlast this summer's moods. The trustee took control of educational and medical payments for the grandchildren. Discretionary expenses require receipts and signatures from people whose license depends on telling the truth. The wellness clinic at the co-working address closed, which is a thing that happens to businesses that depend on people believing they will never be asked a real question. Tom and Erica signed personal guarantees. The Cabo boat is not on the water under their name anymore. The morning after the settlement, I took Emily to school. Lila had asked me to do it because the car was in the shop, which is a phrase that covers a lot of sins, financial and otherwise. Emily held my hand as we crossed the street and did not let go right away when we reached the sidewalk. "Are you mad at Mommy?" she asked. "I am mad at what Mommy did," I said. "I am not mad at you. I am not mad in a way that will make me leave." She nodded like a person processing a blueprint. "Ava says you are building something." "I am," I said. "Something for you." That afternoon I drove to the cemetery and told Lynn everything. I told her that I had been foolish and that I had been faithful. I told her that I had failed in the way that makes failure possible, the way that starts as love and becomes abdication. I told her what I did when I woke up. I told her that I had built a trust that will outlive both of us. I told her that the trustee is a woman who looks like she could carry a beam on her shoulder if she had to. I told her that Emily does not like plastic tubes. I told her about the video. I told her what the judge said and what the specialist said and what Ava said on my porch. Then I said something that I had not been able to say out loud even in the quiet of my own house. "I thought grief made me soft," I said. It did not. It made me quiet. There is a difference. It is autumn now. The first leaves have begun to fall on the maple tree that Lynn insisted on planting even though I told her it would drop seeds like a nuisance in the spring. The house is still, but it is not empty. On Tuesdays I help Noah with his math. On Thursdays Ava comes by to study at my kitchen table because it is quiet here and the Wi-Fi reaches the porch. On Saturdays I take Emily to the library that Lynn loved, and each week she picks a book that has a big word in the title and insists on reading it out loud even when she is not sure how it sounds. Sometimes she looks up at me in the middle of a sentence and says, "Do I have it right?" And I say what I should have said the first time they put a photograph under my nose and told me what to think. "Show me the words," I say. Then yes. There is a box in my study. It is not the fireproof box where I keep titles and deeds and the letters that built my life. It is a new box. Inside are printouts of invoices with numbers that do not match any code that exists. A photograph of a co-working space directory. A screenshot of a video that I will never watch again. A copy of a judge's signature. A trust instrument with the grandchildren's names printed so cleanly that it feels like a prayer. Sometimes I open the box. Not to rage. Not to rehearse pain. I open it the way a builder lifts a drop cloth at the end of a day to see what he has done and what is left to do. I run my fingers along the edges of documents that mean my grandchildren will have braces without begging and textbooks without a lie and a doctor's appointment without a script. My phone buzzes. It is David. He has been attending a different kind of appointment. He is learning how to sit in a room and say sentences that do not have a story attached to them. He asks whether I can meet him and walk around the lake where he used to throw stones when he was 7 and believe that distance was the only measure that mattered. Yes, I say. Tell me when. He pauses, breathes, and says his first true thing in a long time. "Thank you for not giving up," he says. "I did give up," I say. Then I remembered who taught me to hold a line. He knows I am not talking about a lawyer. I still get angry. I still walk into my study and feel the heat rise in my neck at the thought of how easy it was for them to type the right words and make me move my money like a marionette. Then I remember Emily's small voice telling me she does not like the smell of plastic tubes, and I let the anger do what it is supposed to do in a man who has woken up. It builds. The last check I wrote from the old way of doing things was months ago. The first disbursement from the new trust paid for a pair of glasses for Jack because he inherited his mother's vision and my stubbornness and will not admit that he cannot see the board from the back of the classroom. The second paid for a therapist who knows what to do with a child who heard words in a kitchen that no child should have to translate. The third paid for a camp next summer where kids learn how to build things with their hands and their minds. I told the director I wanted them to learn to measure before they cut. He laughed and said that is lesson 1. The phone on my counter lights up with a new photograph from Ava. It is a picture of the view from the college library at dusk. She has captioned it, "Therapeutic Environment." I laugh, and the sound does not feel brittle anymore. People think revenge is about rage. I used to think so, too. I have learned that revenge, the kind that belongs in a life rather than in a movie, is not about rage at all. It is about restoration. It is about setting lines where there were none and enforcing them with a steady hand. It is about taking a weapon that was used against you, the story of sickness, the demand for silence, the drowning in details, and returning it in a different form, a document with weight, a trust with teeth, a promise with a spine. A week after the settlement, I asked Ben to send one more letter. It was not required. It was not even strictly wise, if you ask the kind of lawyer who never learned how to be a person with a pen in his hand. It was a simple letter. It said, "Your father loves you. He will not pay for lies. He will pay for truth. Your children will be cared for. Choose accordingly." Lila did not reply. David sent a message at 3:14 a.m. that just said, "Working on it." Tom sent a text to Ben threatening to sue us all into dust. Ben did not reply to that one. Erica posted a photograph of a salad and a quote about resilience on social media. The trustee requested receipts for the salad when Erica tried to submit it as a medical expense under anti-inflammatory protocol. Erica did not try that again. Last week, Noah asked me whether all grown-ups make mistakes. I told him yes. He asked whether all grown-ups fix them. I told him no. He asked me which kind I am. I am trying to be the second kind, I said. He processed that for a long moment the way he processes everything, silently, with his eyes on his shoes. Okay, he said. Me too. When I lie in bed at night, the house settles around me the way old houses do when the day changes temperature. I can hear the maple seeds tick the roof in the wind. I can feel the small weight of the watch I bought myself to replace the one I pawned for a lie. It is not the same. It does not need to be. I hold my wrist up in the dark sometimes and think about time and money and what a man is for. I thought I knew what I was for when I wired $42,000 a month into a sickness with a beautiful vocabulary. I know better now. I am for the slow, patient work of addressing rot. I am for beams that will bear a load. I am for telling the truth even when it costs everyone in the room something they think they cannot live without. I am a grandfather. I am a builder. I will not fund a lie. And I will never again mistake a beach video for a medical record.
Greetings, and thanks for spending your time with us today. I truly hope you enjoyed the video. I want to wish you a peaceful day or a restful evening, wherever you may be. Take care, and we'll see you next time.